And I think that's probably the best time I've had making a movie, and also one of my favorite performances, just because it was Mickey Mantle.
Welcome to another episode of the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. I'm Chris Bush.
I'm Dean Slider.
And on the show today, we're delighted to have as our guest, actor, director, founder of Raw Entertainment, business mogul, Thomas Jane. Thomas, thank you for joining us on the Filmosophers Show.
This is really cool, guys. Yeah. And my new company is called Renegade.
Renegade. Well, would you like to tell us a little about that?
We just launched about a year ago with my partner, Courtney Lauren Penn, who I had known over the years as being a very talented producer. On the creative side, we were working on a script that we were developing for, and then, we got along so well and sort of had similar sensibilities that we decided joining forces would be a good thing. We started Renegade, and last year we shot 3 films with the Renegade as producers. And this year I'm going off back to Montana to shoot a Western that Renegade's producing. And we just got picked up by Amazon. We just sold a show to Amazon Prime based on a series of best-selling books called Crimson Lake. The series is going to be called Tropo. And we start filming that in June in Queensland, Australia. So that's going to be an adventure.
Wow.
We optioned a Stephen King book called From a Buick 8. And that is unfortunately got sort of put on hold because of all the COVID nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it stars state troopers from Pennsylvania. So we had a little bit of a problem with people, making a series about cops, which I think is going to be to our advantage now, and also necessary to show a sort of a fuller spectrum of what it means to be a state trooper. And it's a great book. So we've had a lot of success. We're very thrilled, really, and it's become our full-time job. Producing is something that, I guess, when you've done it for a while and you've been around knocking around the business for so many years, I can have something to contribute in terms of putting out better product, in terms of making better movies. You sort of see all the mistakes that have been made over the years, and you try not to do them.
Is this more fun for you to be behind the camera as opposed to in front?
I got to tell you, and you're right. I directed my first film 10 years ago. I did the first dramatic 3D film for Sony because they had their 3D televisions coming out in 2009. And I fell in love with the whole process then. I had Frank Darabont as my mentor because we had just filmed The Mist. So he let me come into the editing room, and he goes, "You're the only guy. I invite a lot of people to the editing room. You're the only guy who showed up consistently." I watched him edit the whole damn thing. I treated it like a job. I was there every day.
I'd love to talk just for a moment of what it was like working with him and on that shoot, because that movie I loved, Green Mile, Shawshank.
Yeah.
I mean, but he doesn't seem like you see him all over the place. He must be pretty choosy, or he takes a long time to work on his projects.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah, Frank is like a thoroughbred racehorse. You have to treat them. They're delicate creatures in some respect, and they're also the fastest damn horses you've ever seen. So and they that goes hand in hand. I find with a lot of really, really talented artists, there's a thoroughbred quality to them. They can't get too hot, they can't get too cold. They can only eat certain kinds of things, and there's a whole nother way of treating a thoroughbred than you would say a quarter horse or a Morgan. So Frank definitely is he's a thoroughbred racer.
Well, it just such quality to his work. And, we call our show the Filmosophers. And so we'll take what we kind of have coined a filmosophical look through some of the films through a filmosophical lens.
That's cool.
And The Mist was I thought, such a powerful look at, how fragile the bonds of societal conventions are,
Right.
and how easily they can be broken,
Through fear.
And how religious faith driven by fear
Right.
is a malignant force.
It can be.
But that little community in the grocery store,
right.
it's a microcosm. And what happens, through their exposure to those external forces. And I have to say, the scene at the end of the film is so heartbreaking. And I thought you nailed it so powerfully. It was heart-wrenching.
Yeah, they offered us double the money to make the movie if Frank would change the end.
Really?
We shot the movie for half of what we normally would have got to shoot that film because Frank was adamant about not changing the end. We all were. We had dinner with Stephen King, and he said, if I'd have thought of that ending, I'd have written it in the story. Which I took that was a pretty neat compliment to Frank.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the 1950s moral parable movies, that's in fact my favorite version of that movie is the black and white version on the Blu-ray. And did a whole black and white version where it really feels like a movie out of the 50s, and that's what it was. I'm proud of that one. That's one of the ones I'm very proud of.
It was a good one. Of your film performances, which would you say? I mean, there's certain ones you're very noted for, but they might not necessarily be the ones that you consider your finest work. I don't know. What would you say are the films that you've enjoyed your performances the most?
Well, I can tell you that I just did a group Zoom call with me, Billy Crystal, Ross Greenberg, and Barry Pepper for HBO. They're gonna. I think it's April 28th. It's the 20th anniversary of 61, where I play Mickey Mantle. It's a baseball movie, and it's about the great season of 1961, where Roger Maris broke Babe Ruth's home run record of 60. So he hit 61 home runs
with an asterisk
that season, right? With an asterisk after it. And Haskell Wexler shot it. And I think that's probably the best time I've had making a movie, and also one of my favorite performances, just because it was Mickey Mantle and learning all the baseball stuff with Reggie Smith, who was a number 2 switch hitter behind Mantle for a long time in terms of switch hitting home runs. And he was just the best coach, just a fantastic man and a great coach. And I had such a great time learning baseball and shooting the movie. And the movie is inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame a few years ago.
That's great.
We got to go to Cooperstown. It was cool.
I have to say, watching that film, I was imagining that when that script landed in your lap, I was seeing you like rubbing your hands together, saying, "Oh boy," because you get to do so much in it. You just get to like play every kind of thing.
Right. That was a great one. Yeah. And then of course the responsibility of playing a character who's so beloved, by so many people.
Right.
There was a little pressure there, but that just sort of hardens the diamond, makes you try all the harder, and put in the extra effort.
But it didn't feel like an impersonation. It was very understated, but it was great.
You got his run. You got the way he ran with those bad knees.
I worked on that run constantly, and I appreciate the compliments. Thank you. But I never really felt that I I got his swing down. I really nailed that, but I was always tweaking that run. It was very difficult, and Billy was always like, almost. But thanks, we worked hard on it. I came close.
What was it like working with Billy Crystal?
Well, he knew every single play, every single inning of every single game that the Yankees played in 1961. So every single time we're shooting the baseball sequence, we are recreating the actual inning that was going on at that time, and there's nothing out of place. And Billy had it all in his head. So there was no just sort of running around or making up, hitting a baseball and catching it and throwing it. None, it was all specific to that year. That was really fun. He was friends with Mantle. So I had somebody who I could directly interface with who actually knew the guy, and I got to meet his sons, and Yogi Berra came out to set, and we were shooting. We turned the old Tiger Stadium into Yankee Stadium. They painted the whole damn thing Yankee green, and recreated the entire thing, and even put in the digital subway that ran off the back of the outfield, and it was phenomenal. Yogi Berra walked out and he goes, "I hit one out over there. I hit one out over there." We had dinner. He had dinner with Yogi Berra, and he's famous for his Yogi-isms.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And we got to see one firsthand. The waitress came along and goes, "What will you have to drink, Mr. Berra?" And he goes, "I have a little scotch." And she goes, "Well, would you like that neat or on the rocks?" He goes, "Neat, but put some ice in it." It just rolls out of him,
90% of the game is half mental.
I used to teach school in New Jersey where he lived, and a couple of students of mine had gone up to his house for something, and they described coming to the fork in the road where you have to take it.
Sometimes you come to a fork in the road, you got to take it.
Yeah. Billy Crystal, well, my wife is a film editor, works on documentaries, and she worked with Ken Burns on the baseball film.
Fantastic. Wow.
And she was in the room when Ken shot all his interviews with Billy.
Wow, neat.
And the way she described it, she said, for one thing, you don't have to prod Billy a lot. Right.
No, it rolls out of it.
He just gets going. It rolls out of him. It's all fascinating. It's all hilarious. And the way that it was set up, he was sitting in his seat. Ken was just like inches from his nose right here and just like leaning forward and like that. And right here off to the side was Buddy Squires, the DP with the camera, and then Yafa, my wife, next to Buddy, and both of them struggling to not laugh through the whole
thing. and blow it. Yeah, he's a funny dude, and he's always, and it made the set very fun to be around. And, he's always making fun of everybody, especially me.
Did you hear from Yankee and Mickey Mantle fans? Were they pleased with the portrayal? Was it dicey?
I have signed, I can't tell you how many baseballs I've signed over the years.
That's gracious of you.
That's great.
It's really something. I never thought I'd be signing baseballs as an actor, but I sure have signed a lot of them.
But you never played baseball before the film?
I hadn't. No, I played football in high school, but never played. We played stickball. We used to play stickball in the street with a stick and a little racquetball, and that was really hard to hit. I got pretty good at that as a kid, but never, And as Reggie Smith said, he goes, "Well, you got no bad habits. You haven't developed any bad habits, so I've kind of got a clean slate to work with here."
Yeah, you got what in Zen they call beginner's mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, something that I'm always trying to get back to.
I know Chris mentioned to you that I wrote a book called Cinema Nirvana, and kind of my shtick is finding enlightenment teachings in movies and pretty much anywhere where they were not intended.
Right.
And so watching 61 and watching the whole fascination with home runs, and I got thinking, okay, what is the deal with home runs? And I realized, first of all, okay, the way that the stadium is set up, you've got it's like in life, you've got the participants, you've got the field of action, and then, as I know, you've got some familiarity with meditation and the enlightenment teachings, that then there's the participation and there's the witness, and that as people grow into enlightenment, you're transcending the field. Even though you're participating, you're transcending the field of participation more and more. You're witnessing it all. You're seeing it all as if an uninvolved witness. Right. So what you do when you hit a home run, when you blow it into the stands, is you're coming from the field of action, you're blowing it into the field of the witness, of the uninvolved witness. You're blowing it into the field of the transcendent. And then what that does is it allows you to come home. The whole idea that you're gonna run through this circuit to get back to where you started from.
Right.
But
completely different.
Only now it's different. Exactly. It's the same but different, and which is what all the great enlightened sages say, that when you really wake up into enlightenment, what you see is, oh yeah, now the mountains are mountains and the valleys are valleys, but it's really cool.
I can tell you, when you hit a home run, it feels like nothing. You work so hard at it, and the batting practice is so intensive, and you're trying, and you're trying to line up your body and all the mechanics. It has to become second nature, and it just takes practice and practice and practice to really hone the muscle memory to where you're no longer thinking about any of that stuff. You're just sort of becoming one with the bat and the ball. And when you're trying too hard, the ball you feel it shudder down your arms, and it goes into your bones, and it hurts. But when you hit a home run, it feels like nothing. It feels like the bat and the ball and your body, and it all becomes this one event that literally you don't feel. And I found that to be really amazing, so it's not about how hard you're trying to hit the ball. It's not about how hard you're working. It's this transcendent thing where you're just sort of watching it happen, and you don't even really feel the bat and the ball as they collide. And I always found that, and Reggie Smith was always looking for that. When he said, I can close my eyes and I can hear the way that the ball hits the bat. I can hear what you're doing.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, it's a fascinating sport. There is something very spiritual about it.
Oh, but that's it. When you say it feels like nothing,
right?
That's what. And the idea is, when you grow into full awakening, that's what everything's like.
Right. Yeah, I get it. And I get this sort of like existential appeal of baseball.
Oh yeah, and the way that it feels like nothing, the way that's put in the Heart Sutra is, form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, and then
it's like effortless effort.
Right.
There's a doing, but it's fluid, and it's like the perfection.
Yeah.
Of that
Reggie Smith wouldn't even let me touch a baseball bat for the first 2 weeks. Instead, he gave me a samurai sword. And I learned how to swing with a samurai sword and balancing on a 2x4. So both feet on the 2x4, and as you're swinging, you know, you of course you have to maintain your balance on the 2x4. But he would close his eyes, and he could tell what I was doing wrong by the sound the blade made through the air.
Wow.
Wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
Very good, Grasshopper.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, right?
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So you hit some actual home runs?
Yeah, I hit a few.
Yeah.
You know, not that many, but yes, I did. Yeah,
But you got the feeling.
Reggie told me, you know, about toward the end of our training, he said, you know, he was very pleased with what we had achieved together. And he said, listen, you got that thing that I can't teach you. Because if your dad had started, you know, you playing as a, you know, when you were 4, like all the rest of these pro players, they start when they're 4. You could have been a baseball player. I don't know how far you would have gotten or where you would have gone, but you could have been a pro because you got that thing that I can't teach you. And I always remembered that.
That's the highest compliment.
Hell of a compliment.
Yeah.
We're going to talk in a minute about, which is another theme of the show, Thomas, about some of your favorite films, and you alerted us to what a couple of them are. But I wanted to just touch while we're on the subject of your work before we move on to something else. Just if you have any recollections about your work on Boogie Nights, and let me was that kind of your breakout? Was there a performance that was kind of your breakout? Was that it, or was there something other than?
Well, I mean, the thing that got people's attention was I played Neil Cassidy of the Beat Generation. Neil Cassidy was best friends with Jack Kerouac, and that whole incredible time. But we backed it up and took it to before Cassidy had met Kerouac, 1947. And that's after the First World War, and the sort of the germination of that whole beat mentality. It was called The Last Time I Committed Suicide. And I won the lead in that role up again. And I was playing against Keanu Reeves and some terrific actor, Amy Smart, who's now doing very well for herself. Other Gretchen Mol and some terrific actors were in that. Very young. We were all very young. But that was sort of the movie that got people's attention, and then and may have helped me get Boogie Nights, although that was an audition process with me and John C. Reilly and Philip Seymour Hoffman. You know, it was just the rounds of auditions where you sit in the waiting room and they pile in these actors, but it was a chemistry read between those two actors, and then they kept bringing in different guys to play Todd Parker, and that's where you know, we really just hit it off and had a blast, and that's how I landed that role.
Was it a fun shoot? Was it good working with Anderson?
You know, he was young and excited, and very clearly very literate in his film, and knew exactly what he wanted, and had, of course, you know, everything was Scorsese to him at the time. He was really aping Scorsese the entire film, but in this, you know, world of, you know, pornography, which was a great combination. And yeah, we all had a blast. You know, I got in a fight with Burt Reynolds at one point because he didn't like, you know, it was some improv that we were doing, and I started fucking with him, and he didn't like that. You know, he was sort of a crotchety older guy at the time, and Anderson wanted him to do the movie without his toupee. So, come on, you know, and he just wouldn't do it. He just couldn't take the toupee off. So they had, you know, but to his credit, you know, when we were filming party scenes, there were a lot of actors there. Most of us were just starting out. And I remember Burt Reynolds sitting in his big easy chair on set in between while they're setting up shots and setting the lights. And all of us, you know, a crowd of us younger actors, literally Indian style on the floor, looking up at this guy as he told stories about being an actor in 1950s New York, auditioning up against Marlon Brando for parts, and that was his competition at the time. They looked very similar when they were young, and James Dean and just New York theater, and we were just enthralled with Burt Reynolds' storytelling, and that was a great memory.
That's fun. There's a scene which is one of my favorite scenes of any film, with the scene with Alfred Molina. You know, it's so fantastic. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen that. It's so rich.
That's what I read the script, and that scene is what made me say, I want to audition for Todd Parker.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I don't know, they wanted me for some other role, and I said, I want this guy.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that scene.
Yeah, it's so rich and so weird. And in case everything isn't weird enough, that the kid off to the side tossing the firecrackers.
That was from real life. And one of Anderson's pals, he was at a party, and some kid was tossing firecrackers, you know, and everybody would jump and so he that had just happened. So he got his buddy to come in and just throw firecrackers. That was based on something that he had just seen at a party he'd been to recently.
And of course, Rick Springfield's Jessie Girl and Sister Christian will never sound the same.
Just gorgeous.
That scene.
Gorgeous sequence.
Really so well done. You know, it's a movie about pornography in the San Fernando Valley in the 70s, but really to me, it's a movie about family.
Right.
You know, it's a movie about family, and it's one of the great ensemble films. When I think of ensemble movies, that and Nashville come to mind. It's
right. Yep. Yeah, we all had a blast. We were all young and just starting out, and Anderson had a good eye for talent and really picked up some terrific people. Heather Graham, the Western that I produced last year, we cast Heather as sort of my love lady. So it was nice to reunite with her. We just did that back in October.
You know, some years ago, a couple of friends of mine were interviewed by Time Magazine because they were going to have a big issue on meditation coming out. And because of, you know, meditation was making such a big splash in the zeitgeist. And so knowing that it was going to be coming out, my friends and I were speculating, who are they going to put on the cover? Are they going to put this Lama, or are they going to put, you know, this teacher or this one, right? All the Western sages or the Eastern sages, the Dalai Lama, and they put Heather Graham because she was prettier. They put Heather Graham sitting on a desert, I think, sitting in a lotus pose.
We didn't talk about meditation. I didn't know she was in.
Yeah, she learned transcendental meditation some years ago.
Okay.
Maybe through her work on Twin Peaks with David Lynch, she was introduced. I'm not quite sure.
Maybe. Yeah.
But I know you were introduced to meditation 10 years or so ago through your work with Lois Lee and Children of the Night, which is a charitable organization helping young women recover from prostitution and abuse. Can you tell us a little bit about that connection, your philanthropic work, and your experience with meditation?
Well, Children of the Night is a great organization created by Lois Lee, and it helps get young girls off the street, away from their pimps, and basically allows them the freedom to start a new life, whether that's going back to school and getting some sort of education or learning a craft, but they give them a safe place, they give them therapy, and they create for them an environment where they get to choose, which is so often not the case. You know, they're not masters of their own lives. They're being yanked around first by their parents and then by their pimp. And honestly, a lot of them would rather be with their pimp than their parents. And I've worked on and off with that organization for years. I used to bring in a piano teacher and just have the kids do singing and piano lessons, you know, just stuff to brighten their day a little bit. But Lois's work is instrumental, and what she also, you know, she doesn't push it on the kids, but she also offers meditation, which can be so healing, especially for PTS, post-traumatic stress. I don't like to call it a disorder, but post-traumatic stress and all kinds of, you know, it's the healing waters of your mind. Are so powerful because, you know, ultimately it's all you, you're and that sense of freedom and that sense of control that one can ease into by learning meditation is so important. And Lois turned me on to the David Lynch Foundation and hooked me up with Lynn Kaplan over there. And she taught me, transcendental meditation, which is just a very simple method of meditation. There's many out there, and finding one that suits you is important. And TM's a fantastic place to start.
How's it helped you professionally, personally? Would you say has it redefined your sense of who you are?
Absolutely redefines your sense of consciousness, of who you are, of what the world is. It opens up an entire new world that in every respect is more real than the world that we are indoctrinated into as Western capitalists. Okay. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, it is one of the most powerful things you can do as a human being on this planet is learn the absolute freedom and power of your own mind and consciousness, of which we are merely a drop in the ocean, And we are a drop in the ocean of consciousness, but because we are a drop in the ocean of consciousness, we actually have access to the entire ocean. And that's something that you learn and sort of you go deeper and deeper, and it's a never-ending process, which is also kind of wonderful.
Beautiful.
You never get to the end.
Well, let's start with one of your favorite films. We'd asked you about some of your favorite films, Thomas.
Yeah,
one that you mentioned, which took me by surprise, but I was really pleased to see, was the 1955 Charles Laughton movie, Night of the Hunter, with Robert Mitchum, Shelley Winters, and Lillian Gish.
Terrific.
That is a humdinger of a choice.
Oh my God.
And let's dive into that one for a minute. Share a little bit with us, what it is about that movie that just.
Right. Well, first of all, Laughton is one of the greatest actors that ever lived. You can check him out in Hunchback of Notre Dame or Mutiny on the Bounty, or so many, smaller character parts that he's played throughout his incredible career. First on stage in London, and then in Hollywood. Brilliant guy, bisexual, struggled in the 50s with his sexuality in a lot of ways. This movie is a reflection of something that is both a nightmare and a fairy tale at the same time. Beautiful imagery that Laughton came up with I think it was Stanley Cortez shot it. First of all, just the imagery blows my mind. It really is the peak of that kind of Gothic, Southern Gothic, noirish cinematography that I've always loved and always have a soft spot for. Probably one of its greatest expressions in Night of the Hunter. A couple of kids, the movie's very simple. It's essentially a chase movie where this guy calls himself a preacher. Is played by the great what's his name?
Robert Mitchum. Plays Harry Powell.
One of my
as a malevolent preacher.
Yeah, who had really spent some time in prison, and his cellmate had told him about this hidden money, and so he gets out. He marries the cellmate's old wife, played by Shelley Winters. She's another gorgeous woman with an incredible performer. To try to get at this money, I mean, he will stop at nothing to get at this cash. And one of the most beautiful images from the movie is when he murders her and dumps her car with her in it into the bottom of the river. And there's these underwater shots of Shelley with her hair flowing, and she looks very peaceful and serene, sitting in this convertible automobile, and with the seaweed, right? It's just like, and the hair, and she's peaceful, and she's dressed in white. one of the great iconic images of film, in my opinion.
That's an image that's like that. That's the stuff we dream.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's so incredible when someone captures that
And
on
it is
the
dream
screen.
imagery of the film and the dream nature of the film, which collides with the nightmare
Yeah.
of the film, the innocence of these two little kids, you know, running down the river, trying to escape from this preacher man, you know, who sings hymns, right?
Oh,
Just-
will we
oh, chilling.
leaning? Will a biblical hymn ever sound so malevolent?
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the great image of Lillian Gish. She's 60 years old. At the time, one of the great silent film stars who did movies with W.D. Griffith, and just one of the shining lights of silent film. 60 years old in 1955, and sitting on the porch in a rocking chair with a shotgun.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
with the shotgun, with the shotgun, she's getting ready to blow him away with, but then singing harmony to the hymn.
Yeah.
That
he starts singing, which is creepy enough, over by the fence at the edge of the property, and she joins in, right? And there's this long where they just sing and they're singing together, but that image of her rocking with a goddamn shotgun, singing the hymn, and along with Robert Mitchum is. You know,
well, apparently it was Mitchum's favorite role that he did on film. And I'd read that when Lillian Gish asked Charles Laughton, "Why do you want me for the movie?" He said, back in the old days, back in your era of film, people would sit up straight, alert for what was going to happen next. Nowadays, they sit back, they slump, they're eating their popcorn and candy. I want them to sit up again and pay attention.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Well, it's such an allegory of, you know, wolf in sheep's clothing,
right?
And you know, innocence and evil,
right? And love and hate, as he's tattooed on his knuckles. Love, hate.
Yeah. And Mitchum is so big and so relentless. And at some point, I realized, oh my God, I'm watching Jaws again. He looks like the shark.
Yeah. And it was the benign malevolence, you know. It was the undercurrents of malevolence, where he always had a smile on his face, and his deep baritone voice was very soothing, and him singing, and of course he's dressed as the man of God, and so the dichotomy of the man, which is what him and Lawton had so much fun portraying, you know. And then just the imagery, you know, the river sequence where they're floating, and all the little animals that he filmed, and the spider web as they float through the thing and into the spider's web, and it's just gorgeous.
And the owl going after the bunny. Oh my God,
so creative, you know. And Mitchum looks kind of like an owl in a way, you know? And it's just the height of creativity. The movie came out in 55 and bombed at the box office. It was just ignored, which broke Lawton's heart. He'd be dead 7 years later, but he never directed another movie, to our great deficit. You know, that's the one film that it's an absolute masterpiece. So, guy whose first movie is a masterpiece. And unfortunately,
and in fact, watching it, I kept thinking about Orson Welles and Citizen Kane, because you know, that's the other great first film. And there's a story that when Welles first came out to Hollywood and you know, was meeting with the crew that were going to work on this, and he had all these being again, as we were saying earlier, having the Zen mind, which is the beginner's mind. He had all these ideas, these fresh ideas for doing things. And Greg Toland, the DP, was pulling everyone aside and saying, shh, don't tell him that what he wants can't be done.
Impossible.
Don't tell him it's impossible. We'll figure out a way to do it. And I got the same feeling here, the same freshness. It's like, what if no one had ever made a movie before?
Yeah. And the Southern Gothic, you know, feeling of it all, it's not quite noir, but it is noir. I mean, it's as noir as you can get, but it's not noir. It's gothic. And that had been done in books at the time, you know, which was relatively fresh. Carson McCullers and Flannery O'Connor, Tennessee Williams with his great Southern smoky plays, but had not really been done in film. So people just did not understand what the hell they were looking at the time. But over the years, it has, you know, the cream will rise, as they say.
Yeah.
And over the years, it's become a revered classic for anyone who loves film, and especially me. You know, that's just right up my alley. I've always been attracted to film noir, to darker stories, to German expressionism, to dreams. You know, the dream side of cinema is always, you know, is what really attracts me. You know, it's falling into a dream. The great movies, you fall into a dream. And any movie that wants my attention has to recognize that and be a conduit to that dream space, you know. And there's a lot of different ways to get there.
Are you a fan of Wings of Desire?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I thought Peter Falk was just that voice and those eyes. He only had one eye. Falk was incredible. And I'll watch anything he does. And the German actor who stars in it as well, also Bruno Ganz, also great.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's very dreamlike.
Yeah. No, to me, that's like a complete dream film. It follows that kind of dream logic. That's the other thing I loved about Night of the Hunter. It keeps breaking the formula. You keep not knowing where it's going to go. It's like three different films, and they're all weird.
And Gish says sometimes it look directly into the camera as if she's talking to the audience. You know, it is, but it's cohesive. You know, it's not a movie that doesn't know what it is, and therefore it's three different things. It's not that at all.
Right.
You know, it's very well. Sort of the cohesiveness of it all, you know, it makes a grander picture with these different elements that you would normally think would almost contradict each other. Well, in this, they enhance and support each other.
Yeah. Sometimes you get the feeling that they had to accomplish all that shooting around Mitchum being too drunk or cantankerous or something. Like his whole trial scene. You never see him in the trial scene.
Right.
You get the feeling there was some hasty rewriting there.
That's funny. I didn't know that. Yeah, I know Mitchum used to get arrested in the 50s for marijuana, which was I think kind of rare, you know, at the time. You know, but he was, you know, the jazz musicians were smoking the dope, and you know, but I remember reading about him getting arrested.
Apparently, he and Lawton got along really well too. I remember reading too that, you know, Lawton said he was cultured, gracious. You know, he wasn't his movie image in person. Right.
Yeah, kind of like Keanu Reeves. You know, when I met him and worked with him, he'd done like Dude, Where's My Car? You know, or that kind of stuff where it was, you know, you were just like, this dude, I mean, he was so good at playing this sort of airheaded, you know, kind of like stoner. But you meet him and he's really well read. He's really bright and intelligent and with it. And that was quite shocking.
So Keanu, if you're watching.
We love you, man. If anybody hasn't seen it, my God, man, go watch it immediately. The Criterion DVD is fantastic. It's got all kinds of interviews, and I think there's even a clip on there of Lawton directing. It's audio, but it's in audio. I think it's audio, or it might be there. He's directing the two children, and they're kind of in the hayloft or something, and you can hear Lawton over the soundtrack talking to the kids. So that's a really valuable clip for anybody who's in the film business to listen to Lawton direct these two kids.
You mentioned earlier Lawton in Hunchback of Notre Dame, which I think
one of the classic greatest performances on film.
No one should die without having seen Hunchback of Notre Dame, that version. That is
Why can't I
just,
be made of stone like these?
yeah,
Why wasn't
My-
I made of stone like these?
yeah.
My favorite Charles Lawton movie is Witness for the Prosecution with Marlena
Oh,
Dietrich.
he plays the lawyer. He's brilliant.
Yeah,
He's brilliant as the lawyer. Yeah, that's a great one.
that's a good one.
But the combination of dream and nightmare, and the way that comes, the innocence and evil, dream and nightmare, the contradictions and the opposites that come to play, even down to the black and white cinematography it's truly a masterpiece of cinematic expression that needs to be seen by everybody.
Like you suggested, get the Criterion DVD and
Get a great
enjoy the
print.
special
I don't know what the
features.
print is, but make sure you get, you see it the way it is, as close to how it was intended as possible. Some of my favorite cinematography ever.
Yep. Yep.
Right, which also I think all the movies that I gave you were some of my favorites, not only in terms of drama, but the cinema, the cinematography. Just the Cranes Are Flying in 1957, Russian film is I think kind of forgotten these days, as I had no idea that this movie existed, but my God, what an achievement that film is in terms
It's
of
beautifully photographed, and a story of the ravages of war and
right.
the impact it has on love and family.
Cut My Toes Off. That's how I remember his name. His name is Kalamatov. Kalamatov. Cut My Toes Off. Kalamatov. Kalamatov. I don't know. Great. And his collaboration with that cinematographer, he'd done one film before Cranes Are Flying, and then they went on to do 3 or 4 other ones, one of them being I Am Cuba, 64. I mean,
oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, really, really amazing. One of the great unsung, in my world, unsung. I'm sure he's sung about in plenty of places. DP director collaborations, one of the greats, and we're worth seeing everything they've done together. But Cranes Are Flying, for me, is an incredible peak of cinematic achievement that came out at a time when there wasn't a whole lot of good stuff coming out of Russia. Khrushchev, was that his name?
Yep.
Yeah.
Stalin had been killed. Yeah, he was under that. But so there was a kind of a new optimism or freedom that had just started in the mid 50s, and this film is sort of the launching of that. But before then, film was just disaster, because nobody could say or do anything without painting Stalin as a hero and and all that fun stuff. They were really hobbled. But once the chains came off, they began to produce some insanely, startlingly good work. And The Cranes Are Flying it's a love story. It's a World War, takes place as Russia is entering World War II. The surprise invasion of Germany prompted millions of men to go and defend their country, go sign up. And we follow one such guy as he has to break the news to his bride to be that he's got to go fight the Germans. And then we follow their 2 paths. Him in the army and as a soldier fighting on the front lines, and her trying to survive in the new world of Russia at that time. And so it's very much a love story, and there's war and stuff, plenty of killing and war and all that. But the heart of the movie is this relationship,
Yeah, it's a beautiful film. You mentioned Fight Club as well,
Uh-huh.
as one of your favorites.
Mm.
Talk a little bit about.
Well, it's a cultural touchstone, Fight Club. It's really the pinnacle of Fincher Fincher is such a technical director, and he's very proud of that. And he spends so much time and energy on the technical aspects and makes some of the most beautiful films of the modern age. But they can lean towards sort of perhaps a little colder on the emotional side, and you know, you can tell that he really loves his camera and everything surrounding it. He loves his light and he loves his camera. But this one, the story and the heart and the characters really come out, and it's a great marriage, the best marriage that you know. Fincher's done some fantastic work. He's one of my favorite directors, but Fight Club is a cultural, you know, movie. It kind of changed the culture at a time, and was an expression of so much of what was happening for young men, and it came out at a time when I was young, in my 20s. So that was the audience, you know, and just brilliant. It was a brilliantly executed. You know, Brad Pitt is, I think, probably undersung as an actor. He is a terrific actor, you know, for being such a good-looking ladies' man. You know, it's that gets overshadowed. His really, really great. Him in 12 Monkeys is one of the best performances.
I think he's gotten better and better, actually. As
he is a very talented dude. I'm very impressed with him. And Fight Club is his James Dean, you know, performance. If he'd have died after that, he'd be a legend. He is that. It really is. I think it's his best stuff. I love it.
Yeah, it had such a manic energy throughout. It was, and the story is so great. And what a great
Chuck Palahniuk in the act.
Great twist at the end. I didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
We don't give spoilers away here if we can help it, but that's all we need to say.
So, you know, it's Fincher at his best, and you know, everybody's seen Fight Club, so we won't spend too much time on it. I like to try to turn people on to stuff that perhaps that they've heard about but hadn't seen, or hadn't heard about and hadn't seen, and movies that are, you know, that have also had a big impact on me. Fight Club had a huge impact on me, you know, especially as a filmmaker. Just technically, you know, he elevated the language. He broke the fourth wall. You could actually, in some sequences, see the film running through the projector and starting to burn, you know, stuff like that, you know, which was startling at the time.
I always get very interested in casting that might have been, or casting that almost happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, the great casting tragedy is that W.C. Fields asked for too much money to play the Wizard of Oz.
Oh my God, that would have been great. Yeah.
Because if you listen to all the lines of the professor and the wizard, it's written for him.
Yeah.
And it pops about 5 times better if he's saying it. But in the case of Fight Club, the tragic casting, I mean, you can never argue with Helena Bonham Carter, right? She's always terrific. But
dream in that.
Yeah, but my understanding is it was intended for Courtney Love.
Aha, that's right. Yeah.
Who I think could have brought just an element of scuzziness that would have really taken it over the edge.
Well, her up against oh no, yeah, she was terrific. She reminds me a lot of the girl that played against Gary Oldman in Sid and Nancy. She had that same kind of desperate scuzziness that kind of made you, oh man. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Helena brings a whole nother svelte beauty to the thing that I think really played well, you know, in terms of the fantasy. Her eyeliner running down her face, just that smoky, you know, and the nastiness that came out of her mouth, right? That dichotomy, you know.
Yeah.
Well, let's maybe talk about one more film before we break. Is there another one that you want to turn people on to? Maybe they may not.
Well, yeah. I mean, one thing that when people ask me this kind of question, I always turn to make sure people are aware of Jean-Pierre Melville, who was a French director and directed some of the great crime movies of all time. He was a big fan of noir. I forget his original name, but he changed his name to Melville based on the great author. And had a canny sense of humor about everything that he does. Very understated, very understood. The master of understatement in terms of both the performances he got out of his actors and the way that he used the camera, and some of the great kind of convoluted crime plots, double crosses and triple crosses, and who's good and who's bad, and is there any difference? That whole existentialism that Melville brought to pretty much everything he did. So I would say you might start with Les Doulos, which means the hat. It's Jean-Paul Belmondo and Serge Reggiani. I can never pronounce his name. Terrific guy. He was also in Casse d'Or, the Jacques Becker film. He's a wonderful sort of that sad sack kind of face, the shaggy dog sort of world weary guy. Beautiful, just beautiful to watch. And of course, Belmondo is one of the great French actors. He also worked with Alain Delon in Le Samurai, which is this very, very existential. And a lot of film students like to start with Le Samurai, but that's actually a different film for Melville, where he took to the extreme the minimalism that he retained throughout his other movies, but took to an extreme in Le Samurai, which is a brilliant film. It's very meditative and might be slow for people who are younger today. But any student of film needs to be very aware of the work of Jean-Pierre Melville. La Doulos is a great place to start. Then there's Le Cercle Rouge, the Red Circle. Army of Shadows is a resistance film, not so much a crime movie, although there's crime, but a film about the resistance, which is excellent. Second Wind is another great crime movie. And there's a few others too, but definitely look up old Melville. And in terms of his existential sort of philosophy on life and the way he infused that into his work is really something worth checking out. I love his writing. I love his convoluted sort of the way he plays with I guess the theme of La Doulos is lie or die. You gotta, if you're gonna lie, you gotta take those lies all the way, and if you don't, it'll get you killed. Lie or die.
And so La Doulos, that's Doulos, Ledoulos, La Doulos.
LOS, yes.
Yeah, and that's also, you can see it online, but maybe the suggestion would be use your HDMI cord to hook up to your big screen TV.
And also, if you can get the Criterion Collection app, you can get an app for Criterion now, and they have a streaming service.
Yeah,
and there's so much.
Got tons of stuff.
Tons of great stuff on there, and it's cheap. And I know that they have some Melville stuff on a Criterion app.
Nice. Well, thank you for expanding our cinematic education.
Well, I hope we can all offer each other a little of this or that. But yeah, for you guys as film philosophers, definitely want to check Melville out, because there's a lot there there's a lot to play with. There's a lot going on. Good, Melville, and I think you'd really appreciate it.
Good. I wanted just curious to know, you were born Thomas Elliot. Yeah. You took your mother's last name. Is that correct?
Correct.
There's some movie stars with two first names.
Right.
You got three. You had two to choose from.
Yeah.
Did you waiting in a doctor's office or going to the DMV? Did anyone call you Jane Thomas? Your appointment's up next. That ever happen?
All the time. All the time I get called Jane Thomas. The problem is, when I went to join SAG, you can't, it's phonetic. You can't have anybody else's name, So, and I remember as a kid looking at the credits, and there was a stunt guy named Tom Elliott. And there was also a guy named Thomas Elliott. So I was screwed. I wasn't going to be able to use my name. So I just took another name on my birth certificate. That's that, you know, love it or hate it. I don't know, but it wasn't going to be Elliot, you know. I always loved seeing my name on the credits, you know. I was a big movie guy as a kid. My dad was a big movie guy. Took me to see Alien when I was 8 years old. Took the whole family to. We didn't have money for babysitters, so you know, Saturday afternoon it was we would run off to downtown Washington D.C. and watch whatever was coming out. My dad was a big movie guy, so I got to watch all kinds of movies in the theater that nobody. I saw a drive-in of Mad Max before they dubbed it with American accents. I saw the original, straight out of Australia, Mad Max on a big drive-in movie screen when I was around that same age. It was my dad. Credit my dad. He really he still does. He just digs the movies, you know. And that was fun to see my name on the credits, and then bit me in the ass when I went down to the SAG office to join. Like, wait, you know, we got to change your name.
Thomas, this was a joy.
Oh,
it was
great.
So much fun to get to know you and to know your tastes and your interest in film, and just to have this chat with you. Really very grateful, and hope you had fun.
I did. I love it. I love talking about this stuff. And thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Very grateful. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. Please subscribe to stay up to date on our newest episodes.